After weeks of negotiations to raise the country's debt ceiling, Congress and the White House proved that when push comes to shove, Washington can still get things done. But with the threat of a disastrous default behind them now, you might say that we're entering something of a silly season on Capitol Hill, where we see bills that aren't aimed so much as becoming laws as they are aimed at sending a message, like an expected vote in the House tomorrow on a Republican bill that would prevent the government from banning gas stoves. This despite the White House saying that there is no plan to ban gas stoves. And joining me now on set to talk more about this is the Democratic congressman from Florida, Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Congressman, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Let's talk about the debt ceiling first, and then we'll get to gas stoves.
Sure.
I know you have a lot of interest.
Right, both issues that are on the same wavelength.
Yes, exactly. So from your perspective, and I talked to you quite a bit throughout this process, and you seem to have a pretty middle-of-the-road sense of all of this. Were there any winners and losers here? Did the Speaker come out on top? Did the President come out on top? What's your sense of it?
Well, first of all, the winner was the American people. Because at the end of the day, we did not default, which I think would have been catastrophic. It would have been catastrophic for the American people. It would have been catastrophic for the world economy. It would have hurt the dollar and compared to the yen and made China a winner. So I think the American people were really the winners at the end of the day. You know, as far as the political politics, I mean, listen, obviously the Speaker, worked on a bill. He negotiated on a bill that a lot of his party voted against. I think the President did a really good job on getting that 2-year raise on the debt ceiling, because the idea of a debt ceiling in the middle of a presidential election, I mean, that would have just been politicized to the 10th degree. And I really do think at that point default would have been possible, because default would have been used as a weapon to hurt someone in an election. As far as, what else is, I'm happy we negotiated. I always felt that that's where it was headed anyway. Right? I've always been a believer that both sides should always be talking. This idea that we shouldn't be talking and shouldn't be meeting. But at the end of the day, I think the American people were the real winner. All
right. You said you plan on using the debt ceiling actually in your campaign messaging. This is something that you said in Axios. Moskowitz, who just won by 5 points in 2022, says he does plan to incorporate the debt ceiling into his campaign message, arguing that a vote for Democrats is a vote for normalcy on the issue. And you said, we already had Donald Trump saying live on CNN that the U.S. should default. Imagine what he would say in January or February or March of the next year. Do you think your voters are paying attention to the debt ceiling, that they know what's going on, that that's something you can use as a pitch to them to see you reelected in the next campaign?
Well, look, obviously, thankfully, we didn't see like a decrease in our credit rating like we saw 10 years ago. So I don't know that they were paying attention to it as much this time as they were last time. Quite frankly, Washington has cried wolf a lot on the debt ceiling, so possibly people tune it out. But I will say, I was concerned when I see a former president of the United States saying we should default, as if somehow the United States would just go to bankruptcy court, which is what that president is used to. Imagine what he would say a year from now, exactly my point, weaponizing, the full faith and credit of the United States. So what I am going to say to my voters is what I did say before, is what you saw in the midterm election. I was elected in the midterm election where Democrats did a lot better than everybody thought. It's because I am pushing normal. I am pushing sanity. I am pushing logic. It's enough of all the noise. I mean, we're not going to govern via Twitter.
Okay, so let's talk about what's next. The debt ceiling is passed. You do obviously have some spending bills that you have to deal with in the very near future. Is this culture of bipartisanship something that can continue, or are we going to be in another crisis mode in September, worried that the government's going to run out of money to pay its bills?
Well, as a former emergency management director, I can tell you that this place works from crisis to crisis. I notice it because I feel comfortable, unfortunately, while it's happening, because I'm used to that. I do think, however, that we did show the American people that the adults in the room can get together and make a deal. And that's Republicans and Democrats getting together and making a deal that to the benefit of the American people and, again, to the world economy. But look, there are forces on both sides that, would like to see us just, fight. And if we don't get 100% of what we want, make no deal. Is this new for the culture to come? I mean, Republicans had been together on everything for about the first 5.5 months. Now's a real test to see what happens with the Freedom Caucus. Do they try to pull away and cause chaos in Congress?
I mean, should it be a message to the Freedom Caucus that 149 Republicans voted for this bill when they think about something like a motion to vacate, that Kevin McCarthy seems to have the vast majority of his party behind him?
Well, listen, let me say this to the Freedom Caucus. There is no way, at least myself and I'm sure many other Democrats, are going to turn the power over to the Freedom Caucus. So anything that they propose to try to throw the House into chaos, I'm not going to support that.
That's interesting. Would it go as far as cutting a deal with Kevin McCarthy for a few Democrats to fill that gap to allow him to stay in the speakership?
Well, look, I'll leave that up to my leadership to negotiate. But what I can tell you is if the Freedom Caucus comes forward, the idea that we would aid the Freedom Caucus and give more power to them is something that I can't consider.
Okay, interesting. All right, so let's talk about this vote tomorrow on a bill that protects gas stoves. You have a tongue-in-cheek amendment. I think it's at least a tongue-in-cheek amendment.
I'm trying to put the issue on the front burner.
That would create the establishment of a gas stove czar. I mean, are you a little concerned that you're just contributing to the culture wars with an amendment like this? Or, I mean, what's your point here? What are you trying to establish?
Well, look, this is silly, right? This is completely silly. A week after we just did the debt ceiling and made sure America didn't default, my colleagues across the aisle come not with just one, but two bills on the war on gas stoves, as somehow General Electric is fighting the war on gas stoves. No one's trying to ban gas stoves. We have appliances. Everyone can get a gas stove if they want to get a gas stove. If you have a gas stove, you can keep your gas stove. But we have regulations on all appliances, just we have regulations on cars. There are energy standards. And the Republicans have turned this into some sort of culture war thing. They are prioritizing this. And as someone who's from Parkland, someone who graduated Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, the idea that 6 months into Congress in, Gun Awareness Prevention Month, we're doing gas stoves. We've not had one hearing on school safety. We've not had one hearing on gun violence. The last thing I haven't heard of any gas stoves walking into any schools and taking out 17 children. And so I just think that this is totally ridiculous. And yes, I'm using levity to point out the ridiculousness of what they're doing.
Okay. All right. Congressman Jared Moskowitz, I appreciate it. Always look forward to your assessment of things. And we've got a lot more to talk about as the year goes on. Thanks, Congressman. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.